All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. If we haven't met, my name is Will Stewart, and I'm the Executive Director of Leadership New Hampshire. I just want to start by thanking you all for taking the time to join us today. We know that leaders' calendars are full, and we're grateful that you're choosing to spend this time with us this afternoon, learning more about Leadership New Hampshire. Just one little bit of housekeeping before we get into our discussion today, and that's that we want to let you know right up front that we want to answer all of the questions that you have. We're going to share a little bit about the LNH experience first, but any questions that you have now or at any point during the discussion, feel free to drop them in the chat. And our colleague here at Leadership New Hampshire, Lisa Nash, is going to be keeping track of those, and then we'll be able to wrap those in. Please, ask anything you might be curious about. I guarantee you're probably not the only one who has the same question. So with that, let's go ahead and jump right in. I want to start with really one sentence about why Leadership New Hampshire, or LNH as we call it for short, exists. And that is that LNH is a statewide leadership experience designed to deepen understanding of our state and strengthen leaders' ability to contribute meaningfully to our state's future. That is why we exist. That's why we were started more than 30 years ago. Since 1992, LNH has been bringing together leaders from across the state. And today our alumni network includes more than 1,100 leaders serving in business, nonprofit organizations, government, healthcare, education, the arts, and more. Why does that matter? And why does it matter now? It matters because the challenges facing New Hampshire are increasingly complex, and no single sector can solve them alone. It requires collaboration, but the challenge sometimes is that collaboration requires trust, and trust requires understanding, and understanding requires exposure beyond our own organizations and industries. And so, by the end of this hour, we're hopeful that you'll have a much clearer sense of what participation in Leadership New Hampshire actually involves, who tends to thrive here in the program, what the time commitment looks like, and how to determine whether this might be the right next step for you. So let's jump in and take a look at, begin with what LNH is, and maybe perhaps just as importantly, what it is not. First, what LNH is not. LNH is not a leadership skills seminar. It's not a networking club. It's not a partisan or political forum, and it's not a certification program. What LNH is a structured statewide immersion experience. And over 9 months, kind of following the academic year, participants, or associates is the term we use, engage with the systems that shape New Hampshire, from government, the economy, healthcare, education, justice, the arts, the energy and environmental sectors, and more. You're going to get to meet expert practitioners, policymakers, and leaders working inside all of these systems. You'll hear perspectives that you might not normally encounter, and you're going to do so, perhaps most importantly, alongside a cross-sector cohort of incredible people that stays together throughout the program year. And this really is distinct and unique here in New Hampshire's civic landscape. And really kind of what adds to that and makes it so unique is the breadth and continuity that LNH provides. Breadth across sectors, breadth across the geography of the entire state, and continuity over time, certainly for the program year, but even years and decades to come. As long as you're in New Hampshire and contributing, LNH will be a part of that experience and a benefit for you. Most leaders operate within one industry, whichever one we happen to be in, but LNH intentionally expands that lens. And the trust that forms in a cohort of roughly 40 leaders each year from different sectors, it's real. And these are relationships, again, that are going to continue well beyond your program year. And alumni, a couple of whom you're going to be able to meet here this afternoon, often tell us they'll still pick up the phone, send an email, shoot a text to someone they met through LNH when facing a complex issue. But rather than hear that just from me, I'd like you to hear it from someone who has lived it. I'd like to welcome Tom Raffio. not a stranger to the LNH world or to New Hampshire writ large. Tom is the president and CEO of Northeast Delta Dental and a member of the LNH class of 1997. And he's here to share his experience in the program, as well as how it's impacted him and his subsequent career here in New Hampshire. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Will, and thanks all for listening to me. And again, apologies for my Zoom background. It was a losing bet to one of my colleagues in the state of Washington. I have to live with it for one more day. So Will's done a great job of explaining the program. And one thing I'll say is Will's taken Leadership New Hampshire to the next level. I've been involved with it really since 1997, one of the first classes. And as Will mentioned, 30 years later, I'm still connecting with many of my members from the class of 97. And if you join, you're selected and you join, I would encourage you to do it. But we always have a little private joke that each class is the best class ever. So Mandy will tell you that, and Will tell you that. But we always end with class of 97 was the best class ever, so on and so forth. Because really what happens is you have 12 days off-site, and as Will just mentioned, not only are you meeting the leaders in the state, like the Supreme Court Justice. What other state are you going to talk with the Supreme Court Justice, or go into a prison, or meet leaders in education and healthcare? But you'll get to know each other, and those become contacts for you. I will say this. If you want to be a successful leader in New Hampshire, this is the best program. I'm on many, many boards, as you all know, probably. Done many programs, graduated from Harvard, got my MBA from Babson. But in terms of success in New Hampshire as a leader, unequivocally, Leadership New Hampshire was the best program that I ever did. I was lucky. I moved up here in '95. I feel like I've been here my whole life, but actually I haven't. I mean, I grew up in the Boston area and moved up here in '95. And when you live in another state like Massachusetts, you think, well, New Hampshire is just a few miles north, but it's a completely different fabric. And so I had a mentor, Dr. Silvio Dupuy, who said, one of the things you'll want to do is get into the leadership class, and I did. And as I've said, that has catapulted me and our company to great heights. You get so connected. You learn a lot of the nuances of New Hampshire, and you establish credibility because you know these nuances, and you really will bond as classmates. It's really exhilarating, and in my class of '97, and Will still does a form of this, but when you conclude, you make a commitment to what you're planning to do to make New Hampshire a better place. And my commitment was that I would get involved with the nonprofit world. And of course, as Will and probably everybody knows, I took that too much to the extreme. I'm on too many boards, but I was pretty much an introvert when I came up here, and it pretty much got me out there. And the way you get things done in New Hampshire is by knowing people, but in an authentic way. So my advice to you is definitely seriously consider the program. If you want to be successful professionally in New Hampshire, this is the program. And then in terms of how did it benefit our organization? I went through statistically all the people in our company that have graduated from Leadership New Hampshire from 1997 to we have a current colleague in the program, Jessica Leandri. We've had 16 people graduate. A couple have retired, but all of the 14 that are still with the company have leadership positions in the company. So they took the knowledge that they gained by being connected with other professionals, and they took that and made their career here at Delta even more fulsome. And And we always I always encourage my emerging leaders who work with me to give apply and go for it. The one thing I will mention, because I have been on, not only was I a graduate, I soon joined the board. And one thing I wanted to mention, I'm sure it would come up at some point, Will would mention it, but it's really important that those 12 days that you disconnect. I understand it's really hard with an iPhone to disconnect, but you definitely want to make sure that you have a commitment from yourself in your organization that you can take, the 10 to 12 days out of the office and really be authentic and be present. Now believe me, we all have. I get it. I get a million emails a day. We're all busy, but the one advice I would give you, and we actually established it um, shortly after the class of '97 because people were starting to, miss a day here and there. We said, no, but attendance is really important. So I would say, in short, that this was for me the best program I could ever think about doing and did, and I felt lucky to get into it. And also, as mentioned, the other leaders in our company that have gone through it have dramatically improved their professional skills within Northeast Delta Dental, and many of them have gone on to serve on other boards. So, for example, my actuary and the actuary in an insurance company, those are the people that make sure we stay in business. Her name is Courtney Moore, and she graduated a few years ago and now serves on the Leadership New Hampshire board. So I hope you all consider it. I see some familiar faces there, like Steve, and I'm open to any questions you might have of me. As I mentioned to Will, I have a Zoom meeting coming up at 5 o'clock, but I have time for a few questions. If anybody has any, Pam or anybody has any questions.
Does anybody have a question for Tom? Want to hear a little bit more about his experience or how the program shaped his perspective and understanding of New Hampshire, or how it might have benefited his organization?
Have I convinced you to apply?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Tom, Mike McCormick, Hub International. How's it going?
Good, Mike. Hey, good to hear from you.
Yeah, good to see you. Sorry, in the car with my son, otherwise I'd be on camera. Hey, really appreciate your insight on the mandatory, well, not mandatory attendance, but really to get the most out of it. Help me understand what's another learning from the program that you wish you had that information before you jumped into it. I just want to make sure that, moving ahead, obviously getting the most out of it, but going in eyes wide open as it is a serious commitment. So again, aside from the attending the 12 dedicated days and visits, what else would you suggest to those that are considering it?
I would say that I learned the political process here, and it's very important in my business. For example, just a couple years ago, we finally got an adult dental Medicaid program, Mike, as you know. And that took 30 years of educating the body politic, the legislative leaders, governor and council. So um, it just understanding how New Hampshire works is critical. And you can read a book on that and how the political process works, but by being able to interact with the political leaders, with the Supreme Court, you get that in the fabric of your being, and then it becomes a natural process. All the things that I'm doing, I know a lot of you see me different places here and there, but a lot of that was learned behavior from the class. And as Will said importantly before, in my year we had a few arts folks, and I'm basically a jock, but I learned from them the importance of arts, and so that got me involved for years with being the chair of the New Hampshire Business Committee for the Arts, and then having our company donate to the Palace Theater and the Courier. So it gets you out of your comfort zone. And Will made a terrific point. I mean, it's totally, bipartisan, nonpartisan. You'll get all sorts of different perspectives, and it'll also take you out of your comfort zone. And also, Mike, in terms of how to work collegially, and Will said this as well at the top. I think we need that now more than ever. I had a legislative reception here Tuesday night, and the legislators were saying even in it's not turned into Washington D.C., but even in Concord, there's been a little less collegiality lately, and so to kind of bring that back. And also, Mike, more specific answer to your question, that you pay attention to what's going on in Concord, but what can you do with your own resources? This is my mantra. Sometimes maybe you've heard me hear this on the radio, but like I pay attention to Concord and Washington so I can sound half intelligent, but what can I do, with Delta Dental's resources when I'm made aware of an issue? So because of Leadership New Hampshire, I learned that veterans in general, unless they're fully disabled, they can't get their dental health needs met at the VA, not because of the people at the VA, but just because of congressional rules. So once I learned that, I said, okay, we're not going to wait for Congress to change those rules. So instead, we established a whole separate program. This is outside of Medicaid for veterans. So basically, veterans who are in dental health need, they literally call me at 223-1300, and then we set them up from oral care. So I learned that public policy issue from Leadership New Hampshire. So each one of the days, whether it's education, whether it's the prison, one of the two thought-provoking days for me was sitting at the time the women's prison was in Goffstown, and just listening to the people that were incarcerated there, and that gave me a whole new perspective on education, mental health. And then because of the educational day that we had at Leadership New Hampshire, it got me interested in becoming involved with the State Board of Education, and ultimately I became chair of the State Board of Education. And then all of these funding issues, which to this day, here we are, 30 years later, they're still here. This was all knowledge that I had gained through Leadership New Hampshire. So it kind of shaped my interests. And so those two examples got me involved with the State Board of Education, and then got me to solve the veterans' oral health. And all of you are hugely acclaimed professionals. You have a lot of knowledge, and I think what Leadership New Hampshire will do for you is will take that knowledge and expertise and professionalism that you have, give you a little bit more of the nuances, so you can affect change. And so I think that's how I would summarize my time, which was it gave me that sort of extra special inside baseball knowledge, so that I knew that how to change the issue with veterans oral health, as well as getting involved with education. In my high school yearbook, it said I wanted to become a teacher. I just sort of fell into business, and I learned that I could teach, but I always wanted to have that piece of me. So when I had the educational days Leadership New Hampshire, it gave me that opportunity. And then finally, it gave me the commitment. When you finish your 12 days, you'll be bonding. You'll be in good tears. You'll say you're the best class ever, and you'll commit yourself to making a positive difference in New Hampshire. So I implore you to apply, keep the program vital, contribute to it, and then take it, and then do what I do at the end of your signature block, say, Leadership New Hampshire, class of 2028, and be proud of it, and then use those connections in a good way. And I know my time is up, so Will, thanks for the opportunity. My wife is very supportive, but she always says two things. When people find out I graduated from Harvard, well, you could never get in there today, number one, and then you could never get into Leadership New Hampshire today. So that's how I think how wonderful you all are. So full steam ahead, and I'm sure I'll see you around the community. Thank you.
Well, thank you
Thanks,
so much,
Tom.
Tom.
Thank you.
Appreciate you sharing your context and talking about the relationships that you gained, and that's exactly what we hope that every participant gains. And I think it's pretty safe to say you'd be a strong contender if you were to apply these days.
I might get on the wait list or something. So now you'll hear from someone later on, Amanda, who would definitely get in. So, all right, take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tom.
Bye-bye.
So we're going to talk a little bit now about the curriculum. Tom mentioned a little bit about it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the curriculum, and then my colleague, Mandy Sliver, LNH's Associate Director, is going to talk a little bit about the cohort experience. So the structure of the program, as I mentioned, kind of follows the academic year. We begin in September with a 2-day opening retreat. And that retreat really kind of sets the tone and begins to establish a shared context. It introduces systems thinking and kind of sets that tone for honest dialogue and trust, within this group of sometimes strangers. You might know some folks, but by the end they will be, very close friends. And that happens, after, from October to April, the class will meet 8 full day sessions. As Tom said, these are times when we're meeting at a different location across the state each month, with each session focusing on a major area that shapes New Hampshire. Again, some of these have been mentioned: government, health and healthcare, education, the economy, justice and public safety, arts and culture, and so forth. And these aren't just lecture days. You do get to meet experts, and they are going to be sharing a lot of their knowledge and expertise with you. But as you engage, and it really is an engagement with these practitioners and decision makers, you'll be doing so not just with via panel discussions and kind of lecture style talks, but with site visits and hands-on activities and other interactive components. We want this to be, not just educational and informational, but we want it to be engaging and, even a little entertaining, too. The goal is exposure and understanding. We're not here to engage in advocacy or persuasion. And also I'll say that, interspersed throughout the program year, we have a number of extracurricular activities. Tom mentioned, which is one of the more popular ones, which is the private audience that, each LNH class has been fortunate to have with members of the New Hampshire Supreme Court. Always a highlight, of the program year, getting to go into their chambers and ask them questions one-on-one. But we have a number of other, kind of behind the scenes tours and, being able to get that access that you might not otherwise be able to get if not for LNH. So that's the bulk of the program year. And then it closes in May with a 2-day retreat in the North Country, where you'll reflect on, what you've learned as participants. And as Tom said, how ultimately, this isn't just knowledge and understanding for knowledge and understanding's sake, but the goal is, and the intention and expectation is, that you're going to take what you've learned and the relationships that you've made, both in your cohort and with the entire LNH alumni network, and carry that forward with the ultimate goal of helping to make New Hampshire even better. So really the program itself, the knowledge, the understanding, the experiences, the site visits, that is really only one half of the equation. Equally important, maybe more so in the long term, is who you go through the program with, the cohort, your fellow associates. And I'm going to turn it over to Mandy Sliver, again, LNH's Associate Director, to talk a little bit about that. Mandy.
Excellent. Thank you, Will. And I think, Tom's already jumped off, but that was wonderful. And I'm going to second your opinion there, Will. And I think we would let Tom in now. Yeah, I think he'd be, I think he'd be a great candidate. So welcome, everyone. It's so great to see so many people here this afternoon. A lot of familiar names for me, and a lot of people that I have not yet met. So it's really exciting. So as Will said, my name is Mandy Sliver. I am the Associate Director of LNH, and I'm pretty hands-on during the whole application process. So you're probably going to get plenty of emails from me, interactions with me, if you decide to apply and continue through the process. I do work full-time for LNH, but prior to taking this position, I, like Tom and Amanda, was a member of an LNH class. So I went through the class in 2018 to 2019. My class is a little bit of a rebel. We're the only class that doesn't say we were the best class ever. And I think that that's actually kind of funny, but I think we were the best, and we were certainly, I have many great friendships and people that I'm still in touch with today. But I have been in your shoes before, and I'm always here to like answer any questions you have. Don't ever feel like it's a stupid question. It's a really unique process, and it's a very different kind of progress to kind of go through this application process. So please always feel free to reach out. So I thought the best way to get started was to talk a little bit about what the LNH experience actually feels like day to day. I think that's a common question. I'm going to be covering kind of a lot of these are questions I hear a lot. So each class is made up of about 40 to 45 leaders, as you've heard, across New Hampshire. We'll talk a little bit about that kind of cross-sector mix of each class, and I think Tom even referred to that as well. And over time also, your class really becomes like a tight-knit group or cohort. And as Will mentioned, we call members of the class associates. So you're going to hear that term a lot. That's just one of our historical things that we do. So in terms of expectations, LNH is not like a sit back and listen kind of program. The associates don't necessarily need to be experts necessarily in anything, but everyone does need to be willing to kind of show up consistently, participate in discussions, listen to other perspectives, and be willing to share their own experiences honestly. And in each class really does develop a really strong sense of trust pretty early on. It's a really special thing to watch. Each program day is structured with a topic. We bring in experts, like we mentioned, experts throughout the state in that field. Many of them are alums, many are not. We look to who can speak to the topic. And they really don't just make a presentation. A lot of times the presenters are going to be interacting with the group. They really get more, a lot of our presenters will say, I get a lot out of the interaction with the class and I leave learning something too, which is also a very special thing. We've got, let's see, across those 8 days, let's see, we have, several different, presenters that kind of come all across. Sometimes we've got panelists, sometimes we've got different presentations, and it really is, the associates make it special as well. And that program does, we do work best when everyone's kind of curious, open. We like to say, it's a little phrase that we have is give people grace to workshop their thoughts. A lot of times people will ask a question and they're kind of like formulating the thought as they ask. And I think that lately we see a lot less of that. And I think it's really important that we do have a chance to kind of say things out loud and say, I'm really not sure if I should be saying this, but I want to say it. I want to get it out. I want to be able to, and people give grace to that and be able to talk that through and workshop it. And it is very special. But Tom mentioned too, and I think everyone who's been through LNH will mention, the best way to think about LNH is that you're going to get out of it what you put into it. And that's huge. So you're truly in control of your own experience. To that note, peer learning is a huge part of LNH. Some of the most valuable insights, they don't necessarily come from that speaker in front of the room. They come from the person sitting next to you. To have that opportunity to turn and sit with that person and say, well, what did you hear from that person, the speaker? What did you hear them say? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to hear something that you didn't hear. And having that opportunity to talk with them is really the special sauce and of what we do. But let's see. I apologize again if my voice is a little bit wavery. I've come down with the cold that everybody on earth has right now. Next thing that I hear a lot of people talking about is like who else is in the class and what's the makeup of the class look like. So something to prepare for is that LNH will take you outside of your little bubble. It's a small state, so you're going to know some people in the class, but there's going to be a lot of people that you not only maybe didn't know them, but you may not know anything about their industry. You may not know anything about their company. We did have an associate a few years back that at our retreat, he made a great observation on that first day. We spend a whole day at the opening retreat where everyone's just getting to know each other and having an opportunity to just talk to as many people as possible. And he said something, he said, I thought that being in this class meant that I would be meeting a bunch of like-minded people, but that's not true at all. He said, after talking with people in this class and in this room, I realized that we're actually not like-minded, but we are like-focused. We all want our communities better, but we're going to have different ways of getting there. And that is a really unexpected thing. And it's really exciting. So we use that now, and he's got a good ego. So he loves the fact that I quote him on that one. So again, most of us, we're going to spend our professional lives and our days kind of surrounded by the same people, similar fields. And this is, we try to intentionally break that pattern because we really believe that leaders get better when they understand the broader system that they're a part of. And at the end of the program, I think that most participants that we talk to, most associates and alumni, are going to say that 3 things stand out the most: the long-lasting relationships they build, the broader understanding of New Hampshire, and the chance to learn from people that they probably wouldn't have ever met otherwise. And that is a powerful combination. I think that's kind of what makes it, really unique. So that's a little bit about just that experience piece. Then I get to do what I call housekeeping, which is a lot of logistics. And so some of the logistics and some of that might be what some of you came here for. So again, some frequently asked questions. I'll roll right into those. And if there's any that I missed or there's any we need clarification on, again, just toss it in the chat. Lisa's going to be watching that, and we can answer those at the end. So I am going to have, there's a lot of information here, but you all should have had the link to our website, which has that information as well. Don't feel like you have to magically know this or remember it just because I'm saying it. Feel free to reach out. And I saw Lisa through my email in the chat. Thank you for doing that. So the first common question people have is like, how do I know that I'm a good candidate? Who is LNH for? And the program is for people, as Will said, like people who are leading in some way already. And like we mentioned, it's not like training, necessarily leadership training, but development. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's only for people with a certain title or certain role or certain position within their company. It just means people who have influence within their community, their sphere of influence, their organization, their industry, people who have a goal to actively help shape the future in their space. We do focus on statewide engagement, Leadership New Hampshire, that's no surprise, but that can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. We look for candidates who are curious about how different parts of the state work together and maybe who want to be part of New Hampshire's future in some way, whether that's civic involvement, cross-sector collaboration, public service, or community leadership. It really looks different for everybody. And you really don't need to know exactly what that looks like for you yet. We just are looking for a genuine interest in being involved in those ways. And finally, as I mentioned before, every class is intentionally diverse in professional background, perspective, region, all kinds of different ways that we can possibly make up to give you the fullest, richest experience possible. We try really hard to make sure that no single profession or viewpoint is going to dominate a class. We know how easy that is to happen. So it's a really, really intentional effort that we make, because that balance is what makes it stronger and more equitable for everyone. Another common question people ask is about the time commitment, and it's been mentioned a couple of times here as well. So as you've heard, program goes from September through May. We've got that 2-day opening retreat in September, the 2-day kind of closing retreat in May. Both of those days do include lodging. There's overnight lodging, and we'll get into all that as part of the tuition. But between those retreats, there are full program days, again, 1 per month from October through April. And these are full day sessions. So when we say full day, we start around 8:30 in the morning, goes till around 5 o'clock. Some classes will have a meetup afterwards if that's optional, if you want to stay. It makes for a really long day, but a really amazing day. But participants are expected to attend consistently. So our associates, we do expect everyone to be engaging in some way and participating and contributing toward the fullness of the class. Our official attendance policy, as Tom mentioned, it does outline that if an associate misses more than 2 program days, we reserve the right to withhold graduation and alumni privileges, I think is how it's worded. But we understand that life happens. I don't want you to feel that we are not understanding of that. Sometimes things are way out of our control. So we do work with every individual situation to allow the best outcome. We want people to graduate. The easiest way for me to say it, if you're concerned that you're not going to graduate and you're trying to make up time that's missed and trying to work with us and communicating with us, we are going to try just as hard as you to make sure that you fit those requirements. So we're very hands-on in that way. In addition to program days, Amanda mentioned in the comments in the chat, there's some pre-reads and some homework, and it is very important to do those. That can, you can really get more out of your experience that way. But we're not going to expect anyone to do major assignments, group projects, anything like that, like during in between session days, that sort of thing. The focus is on being present and engaged during those program days that we have, rather than adding a lot of extra things to your schedule. We try to get all of the dates and things out as early as possible, especially those occasional visits that have been mentioned too, like some tours of facilities. We try really hard to get those out, a month or two in advance. Sometimes they come up last minute, and we understand that some people can make them and some can't. But we do the best that we can to help you plan ahead. Overall, most people find that the time commitment, while it is significant, it is manageable if, again, with the pre-planning. But that being said, we do stress that support from your family and your employer is really helpful, and it's a planning in advance. And it is very important, because it's a pretty significant time commitment. And we've had many associates where their team members are alums, and they help pick up the slack on program days so that the associates don't have to get interrupted, which is really, really amazing. But we also understand not everyone's going to have that opportunity, but it's certainly helpful if you are lucky enough to be in that situation. Being able to kind of focus and have that time is really important. Let's see. Tuition and scholarships is the next thing that I get asked about most often. So tuition, you would have seen on our website, it's going to cover, again, the full program experience, retreats, session days, lodging, materials, meals. We work with dietary restrictions individually to make sure that everyone's needs are met. The tuition for the year is $4,500, and it is due in August. We can work individually with people in special invoicing, needing to cover budgets. Like, we do understand everyone's situation is different. So some people pay their tuition personally, but some people have it covered by their employer, and some it's a mixture of the two. We invoice associates directly. They're responsible for forwarding that invoice to their employer if their employer is going to be helping out. But we understand that not everyone has an employer that is able to pay all or even part of tuition. And the most important thing here is we want to make sure that cost is not the reason you choose not to apply. That's very important that you hear that one. LNH is very proud to be able to offer scholarships due to the generosity of our alumni, our partner organizations. And we also may help be able to connect you to other organizations that might assist based on your industry or region. There are some associations that work with LNH for that purpose. So again, very individual, one-on-one, we can help in most situations. On that application, you're going to see the instructions for applying for financial assistance. So just follow those. And the most important thing I'll say is that the application process and the scholarship process do happen simultaneously. You have to apply for them simultaneously, but we do not take the scholarship requests into account at all for selection of the class. So they happen simultaneously for budgetary reasons. And what happens is that the selection committee reviews everybody's information beforehand without knowing anything about cost. Once the class is chosen, that's when we go back and we start taking a look at those. So it is really important that you get any scholarship requests in before the deadline, because unfortunately, if we get those requests after the deadline, we really can't consider those. You all know how small nonprofits work. So enough said there. And finally, the timing of the application process. You've all seen, hopefully, that the deadline to apply is March 15th. The earlier you get your application in, the better opportunity you'll have to pick an interview time that works best for you. So I strongly urge you to get that in early. The month of April is going to be spent with the selection committee looking through all of your materials. We are aiming to notify applicants the week of May 15th. So sometime in that week is when we would send out the notifications of acceptance and any scholarship application requirements if necessary, or amounts. You would have from May 15th until May 29th to kind of look over everything and decide to confirm an intent to participate. So by the 1st of June, we'll be welcoming people and making announcements and putting out press releases and those kinds of things. So I know that was a lot and I talk kind of fast. So next, I'm going to take the opportunity to introduce our second guest for the afternoon. So have a little bit, but again, we can come back to the questions that may have been in the chat once we kind of finish up here. So super excited to invite our next guest, Amanda Grapponi-Osmer. I know I saw her jump in there. She is a proud alum of the class of 2010. I'll let her decide if she's I'm probably 2010 is the best class ever. I'm going to go ahead and say it. She currently serves as the Chief Vision Officer and the President of Grapponi Automotive Group, recently becoming the first female president in the company's history. And last year, she added author to her resume. If you're interested, she published a book, Grapponi Automotive, The Founding, which tells the story of her family's journey and the origins of the company. So that was a great read. And if you're looking for a new book, I'd highly recommend it. So let's see, Amanda, where are you at?
Well, I'm next to you on my screen. I don't know where I am for everybody else.
It's good to see you.
And earlier I thought Tom Raffia was calling me Mandy. I'm like, what? It was that. Only my grandfather gets to call me Mandy, and he died in 2012. So, but now I knew who he was talking about. Well, so Will, you going to cue me up, or I'm just going to start blabbing like I usually do?
Yeah, well, Amanda, we'd love to hear Tom, kind of talked about his experience. Yours, was, 15 years or so after his. Love to hear, kind of what you experienced in LNH, both during your program years and, kind of what you've taken away from it, in the intervening years since, and, kind of what general thoughts you might have for people considering applying.
Sure. So class of 2010 was the one year I think that we didn't actually have an executive director. So it remains to be seen if yours was the only class that didn't say they're the best class ever. I think probably we did, but we were in a little bit of limbo, and it was a fun year because we got to kind of be on the cusp of figuring out who was the next ED going to be. And it became Steve Reno, and it's pretty exciting. So as soon as I graduated, actually, I ended up joining the board, much like Tom did, because I wanted to be around Steve more. I just knew he was a brilliant guy. And I also just wanted to keep giving back to LNH. Because for me, truly, it was like one of the surprising things about it is how little I knew about my home state. And I always considered myself like New Hampshire through and through. I'm like, nobody's more New Hampshire than me. But I was woefully ignorant about how the state worked. So I was really, really interested in learning about the legislative process, doing the police ride along. In fact, and I wish Tom were still on so he could hear this, because I don't know if he knows this, but when he was speaking to our class during Education Day, that's when he was on the State Board of Education, he mentioned something about early childhood brain development. And it really stuck with me insofar as I just didn't understand that the first few years of life, how critical it was for when kids' brains were developing, and how if things aren't going right in those first few years, how much of a trajectory that can set a kid on that ends up being negative. So fast forward to 2017, I actually helped to co-found a nature-based preschool out in Canterbury at the Shaker Village. And that was a direct result of me being in the room with Tom and hearing him talk about the incredible importance of making sure that kids get what they need at an early age. So I will tell him that next time I see him, because I don't think he's ever heard that story. So for me, very impactful. I actually developed a program called Leadership Grapponi, totally ripped off Leadership New Hampshire. I'm not embarrassed or ashamed to say it. I'm like, if something's working, don't reinvent it. So we actually had somebody who's on this call. He's one of my team members who I'm going to be nominating for the upcoming class. He went through the Leadership Grapponi program, and it was very much a kind of a mirror of what you guys do in terms of going to different parts of the state, having outside speakers come in and do that sort of thing. The difference with ours is that we do specifically try to do leadership development, skills of leadership development. And obviously what we can't offer is this amazing group of people from different backgrounds who all bring different perspectives. We're all Grapponi people, so that's a big difference. But I don't think I can overstate the impact that LNH had on me. And I'm a very big fan, very big supporter. And I'd love to take any questions anybody might have.
Any questions for Amanda about her experience in the class, what she's taken with her in that time? Amanda, maybe like Tom, you just do such a great job.
They're so busy on the LNH website applying.
I'll ask a question.
Sure.
Go ahead, please.
Sure. What strategy, during the program do you think helped you get the most out of it? Like, what's one thing you really did is it obviously was powerful for you? So
yeah, I gave myself away in the chat. If you saw that, I had written, do your pre-work. because there's only so much you can cover in 8 or 9 or 10 hours, however many hours you're spending together. And truly, there's a lot of meaningful research and data that you can really dive into prior to the day of. And one thing too, that I don't know that we've mentioned it yet, which is surprising. I may have missed it in the first few minutes of the call, but that the ride time, the commute time together was always hugely popular, and people would just have the most fun, because you end up kind of going to like East Jabip sometimes, and sometimes it takes you a few hours to get there, and then it's an early start, and you want to have fun on the commute up. So we always, in my class anyway, we had a good time of ride sharing and just getting to know each other that way. So definitely connecting with people, just personally, not having to have structure around it in the rides to and from, and then making sure you do all the work and diving into all the research.
A quick follow-up question.
Yep.
Do you, since it is all over the place, and where I'm coming from down in southern, Keene,
Yep.
corner of the state, everything's going to be kind of far. So
Yeah.
what about staying overnight? Do people do that?
Well, first get your passport updated if you live in Keene. That's no easy way from here to there. I don't know, Mandy, if you want to speak to that, or Will. I never personally did. I just drove to and from. Sometimes they were a haul. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, it's definitely not unheard of, especially, Joanna, for you down in Keene. That is there are a couple people who live in the far corners of the state who are not early morning rider type people, and it definitely does happen. And so sometimes I'll have people reaching out. And then, as Amanda mentioned, and thank you for mentioning that, Amanda, I hadn't mentioned the carpooling, because that's another one too that while, when you think of 40 to 45 people, like hopefully there'll be a few people in Keene that are in your class. And so maybe you'll find someone in that area to commute with. And then you get to, I had someone, I live in Peterborough myself, and there was one of my classmates was in Dublin. And so she and I would commute together all the time, and we got to know each other really well that year. So it is a good opportunity to do that. But yeah, some people do opt to, do the hotels, and then you get to learn a lot about the state that way too.
Thank you.
Well, Amanda, thank you so much for sharing of your experience
Sure thing.
and your recommendations for these folks. And, it's one thing for myself, for Mandy, my colleague Lisa, to talk about how great LNH is, and we truly believe it. But of course, we're the usual suspects in that regard. So
Right.
having you and Tom being able to share your personal experiences means a lot. So thank you.
Yeah, if anybody has follow-up questions, my email is just amanda@grapponi.com. I can put that in the chat. I'm happy to answer questions offline.
Well, thank you. And we want to get to everyone else's questions. I've seen a few being dropped in the chat. And, before we do that, as Lisa is kind of looking to see what's there, just want to zoom out just briefly and, reiterate some of the points that both Tom and Amanda and Mandy, have all made. That, LNH, like, believe me, you're going to get a lot if you decide to apply and are accepted. You're going to get a lot out of it personally, individually. But it's not just an individual opportunity. For those of you who you're with organizations, you'll see that it strengthens the organization that you're in. It develops that, increases the leadership capacity of the organizations that you're a part of. And ultimately, and this is why LNH was formed, it really strengthens the broader civic fabric, here in New Hampshire. You're going to return to your organizations and to your communities with a stronger understanding of how New Hampshire works, how the systems intersect, and that's going to improve decision making. That you have, organizations and communities. You're going to gain leaders who see, beyond their own sector and their own region. And as I mentioned, I like to really reiterate this point of the alumni network, 1,100 plus strong, of incredibly interesting, passionate people who want to improve New Hampshire. And this is going to be really a long-term resource for collaboration and problem solving that you can work with and lean into, and people who want to help you. And that kind of cross-sector collaboration, it's difficult to manufacture, but LNH creates the space for it to really happen organically. So I'm going to stop talking. We have a few minutes left of our time together. So with that, let's turn to your questions. Lisa, what are we seeing in the chat?
Hi, everyone. First, I just want to say, Lisa Nash, class of 21, most resilient class ever. We were COVID. We were the Brady Bunch class. We were on Zoom in little squares. So we don't say we're the best class ever. We're the most resilient. So questions. Will, can you talk a little bit about the tour days and the difference between, like, sometimes we do tours within the program days and then the optional tours? I think that would be helpful.
Sure. So tours you'll see in both, the program days, the regularly scheduled program days. I saw a link being shared. We already do know those dates, for the upcoming year. So there'll be, site visits and tours as part of those. But we also have kind of the extracurricular activities, we'll sometimes call them, that aren't part of regularly scheduled program days. And as Mandy said, some we might kind of come up and be able to take advantage of opportunistically, but they're not part of the regular calendar. So they're kind of extras, they're optional. You'll definitely get a lot out of them if you're able to make it, but they're not mandatory. But you won't, your experience will not be diminished if you're not able to take advantage, but will be enhanced for sure.
Awesome, great. And Mandy, could you talk a little bit more specifically about the application, the recommendation letters, how that works, what those requirements are, just as people are trying to work through that?
Yeah, no, that's a great, and thank you, Pamela, for asking that question, because I want to make sure to let everyone know that too. So the letters of recommendation that we ask for, we do ask for two. They can be written by anyone. It doesn't have to be. What we're looking for is the selection committee is just looking to get to know you better. Those letters can come in anytime before the March 15th deadline. So what I recommend is go ahead and fill out the application with your essay now if you know you're going to apply and you're ready to commit. And as soon as I get your application with the essay, that's when I'll reach out to set up your interview. If you have already submitted your application and you haven't heard from me, that's because we were getting ready for this session. So I'll be reaching out next week for anybody who already has put in their application. So yeah, we'll go ahead and book the interviews. The letters of recommendation can come in anytime before March 15th. You just email them to me separately. Again, very manual. I kind of get to piece everything together and connect everything. And if I don't see your letter of recommendation and you've submitted an application, I will follow up and ask you. So I don't mind doing that.
Great. And I love this question, a question about access for people, north of Concord, north of the Notch. We have a couple of people in this year's class but I'll let you talk to that, Mandy, because you have more of a historical perspective.
Yeah, no, thank you, Eric, for that one. And it is a hard one. We have a lot of sympathy, and we try to try to point that out to the class a lot, to say, hey, for when we're down, when we go up to the North Country, or when we're up even, Northern Lakes region, and everyone has to travel 2 hours, we're like, hey, think about Eric up here. He's got to travel like 3 or 4 hours. I'm assuming that you're up there in the North Country. And so we do have lots of alums from that area. And, I think a lot of them tell us, I'm not going to say from my own experience, because, the people who live up there, they say they're used to driving that if they have to. And so, it is definitely something we try to make sure we mix it up around, but we do have a regular session day. I think we're going to be in Bethlehem for one of our regular session days. And we try to make sure that we're mixing it up all over, but it is a little bit more of a challenge, but we try to do whatever we can to accommodate and to help that be a successful experience, because we love to have everybody from all corners of the state.
Well, if I can jump in here too, I'd just like to say that, and reiterate that, one of the benefits I think of this program is that for each of our session days, we try to be in a different part of the state. So we want to certainly introduce you and give you a better depth of understanding when it comes to the issues New Hampshire faces, but also New Hampshire's geography and our place and the sense of place that each region has in the different fields. So, part of that, kind of geographic diversity, we look to have in the class is, we want everyone to have those experiences, if even for a day. And, so everybody's going to be driving, longer distances at some point, whether we'll be in the Monadnock region one month, we'll be on the seacoast another month, we'll be in the White Mountains another month, the lakes. But yeah, it does, recognizing just given New Hampshire's geography, it does disproportionately sometimes, fall a little bit harder on folks in Coos County in particular. And
Sarah and Judith have a couple of questions about the kind of regional leadership programs versus Leadership New Hampshire. Judith in particular, is it presumptuous to apply to LNH if one has not participated in their local leadership program? And then Sarah's interested in what the difference between the two programs.
You want to take that one, or you want me to take that?
Sure, and feel free to chime in, Mandy. Absolutely not. It's, it is not presumptuous whatsoever. There are some folks for sure who have gone through regional leadership programs, Leadership Lakes Region, Leadership Greater Nashua, et cetera. But it is by no means a prerequisite. Where there might be similarities might be in kind of structure and style. You might often see some of the programs might have similar days, a public safety day, a government and politics day, but whereas those are, kind of geographically, confined to the region, per the name, ours per our name, takes a little bit more of an expansive, greater view. So it's, I think if you've gone through one of those programs, it might give you a better understanding of kind of the cadence and, kind of the cohort-based experience, but by no means is it a required. What would you add, Mandy?
I'll say I did Leadership New Hampshire in 2018 and 2019, and then it wasn't until 2022 that I took Leadership Monadnock. So I did them the opposite order for my region, and so it's definitely not necessarily. I think the regional programs are amazing, but they are, and again, they are different, and all kinds of. They're all great programs, and so I don't see one being necessary for the other. Yeah, I agree.
And I'm just going to throw in my own question here. We've had quite a snowy winter this year. We've had a lot of snow. Can you talk a little bit about snow days or what happens with weather? And I think we've been pretty lucky, knock on wood, that we haven't had a snow day.
So we're just going to go on record here and say that if there's a snow day on our next session day, we're going to blame Lisa. Because I hate to always say that, knock on wood, it hasn't happened in a very long time. So I don't really have an answer for that one. As we are here in New Hampshire, we will do our best. But it's where people do come from all corners of the state. And we have so many people involved in the programming. It would take I'm sure we've seen some 100-year storms here, but we're gonna try and do our best. I can't answer that one, Lisa. Sorry. I don't want to think about it. I want to put it that way.
Will, Patrick is asking about how associates handle days off, like with their employers, and can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. As Mandy and I believe both Tom mentioned, we certainly, I think it works best, when you have an understanding and have the support, of your employer to recognize that, these days, recognizing, and like Mandy said too, that, there are always exceptions in life and work. Certainly both happen, but to the extent that, you do know and will know the dates ahead of time, that you can do your best to plan around them, and that your employer hopefully supports that, and kind of sees the benefit to the organization as well, and can support you, through that, seems to be what people find most successful. What would you add to that, Mandy?
Yeah, no, it's true. And that's really where it comes into every individual situation is different. And I will say that, a lot of people do have that very fortunate situation of the support from their employers. Again, when I went through the program myself, I used PTO days, I'll be honest, because my employer was not supportive at the time. Luckily now I work for LNH, so I have a much more supportive employer. But so it's truly different for each situation. And we do understand that can be challenging for some, especially small business owners, things like that.
Well, it is 5:30, and it looks like we've got do we? Okay,
it was a thank you.
That was a thank you. So I want to thank you all for your thoughtful questions, and just reiterate that our emails are on the website. Mandy is a wealth of information. If you have any additional questions, please reach out.
Absolutely. And thank you all for being here, first of all, for your interest, in Leadership New Hampshire, for taking an hour of your day. Again, we know leaders are busy, so we are especially grateful of you for taking the time to learn a bit more about LNH. As a reminder, applications for the class of 2027 are due in about a month on March 15th, and application link, there in the chat and on our website at leadershipnh.org. If you're still have some questions or still wondering if this is the right fit for you, Mandy would be, as Lisa said, happy to have a brief conversation, or as long as conversation as you would like, to answer your particular questions. Leadership New Hampshire, as was mentioned, is a meaningful commitment. We do ask, for your time. Certainly we know that the tuition is not inexpensive. Again, reminding you that we do have a scholarship, availability there, but it's also a rare opportunity to step outside of your sector, to broaden your perspective, and really to contribute more effectively, ultimately, to the state that we all care about. And if that's something that resonates with you, we sure hope you will apply. So with that, thank you again for being here with us tonight, and have a great evening, everyone.